Yo, what is up? New tank alert. You are looking at the 114 SP2 Chinese tank destroyer in tier 10. Now, usually I don't feature these kinds of tanks, but it looks like this tank is in the final stages and ready to go into the live servers really soon because I think they've reached the final stats for the tanks, for this tank in the test server already, in the super test. I mean, again, this is a Chinese tank destroyer called the 114 SP2. This is has a designation of quote-unquote special tank, which means this is some kind of reward tank. Now, the only time Wargaming has done reward tanks in tier 10s is when they are some kind of clan wars reward tank. So that's where I think we're going with this tank, but let's keep that in check, and we will revisit that a little bit later. But first, let's just assume it is a Clan Wars reward tank for the moment. You have 2,000 hit points in this tank destroyer, 980 horsepower. Now, this tank has been in super test for some time now, but today it has been kind of nerfed, I would say, because the armor was slightly nerfed. Now, before it was nerfed, this was looking a lot like a very strong tank. I was very much looking forward to it, but they have nerfed it slightly, and we're going to talk about that nerf in a little moment. But first, let's talk about this tank. 980 horsepower in a tier 10 tank destroyer. That is pretty good. This is pretty good horsepower. The power put per ton or power to weight ratio on this tank is 15.56, which means it is not too shabby, but it is not exactly it is not a mobile tank, that's for sure. It's gonna feel more like a slow heavy tank. It has a maximum top speed, forward speed of 45 kilometers an hour, and going in reverse in 18 kilometers an hour. Rotation speed, which means the hull rotation, 31.29 degrees per second, which is pretty good. I would say this tank has a little bit of agility, in my opinion, because of that hull rotation speed. The gun rotation speed, however, is not that great, 18.77 degrees. You might have a fairly quick hull rotation speed, but you don't have a very fast turret rotation speed, which means you are looking at swinging your gun around to shoot using your A and D keys. That means you need to move your hull to move your turret as well. Does that make sense? The turret is so slow that you are going to have to use your hull to rotate your turret around you, to aim at your targets as well. So that is my initial feel that I'm getting from this tank destroyer anyway. But let's get straight to the hull armor. That is where the nerf is happening. The hull armor is still the same, not much armor, 75 millimeters in the front, 75 millimeters in the side. Hull armor 75 millimeters equals no armor. So there's no hull armor at all, but there was initially some turret armor, 175 millimeters from the front, but that has since been nerfed to 135 millimeters frontally. So 135 millimeters frontally means that's not really good frontal armor at all. A lot of tanks are going to be able to overmatch the turret armor with premium shells or something like that. So that's not great. But what is great is the damage on the gun. It has 650 alpha damage and 840 on HE damage. So the standard shells and premium shells are going to do 650 damage, while the HE shells are going to do 840 damage with HE. That is pretty amazing. Reload time is 13.81 seconds. Now 13.81 seconds doesn't sound that great. It sounds like a 122 TM, but I'll be honest with you, 13.81 seconds in a tier 10. If you are running BIA, food, gun loading skills, rammer and whatnot, you can get this down to about maybe 10.5 seconds, 11 seconds. So we are looking at a pretty competitive gun, to be honest with you. I think this gun will be pretty good. I think the damage per minute will be pretty good. The dispersion on this gun as well, because it is a tank destroyer, you have a 0.31 dispersion over 100 meters. Now 0.31 dispersion, in my opinion, you don't even need to run vertical stabilizers. You do not need to really make this gun a lot better, in my opinion, because 0.31 dispersion is up there with all the good tanks, all the tanks that perform well in terms of the gun handling. This is pretty good. So aim time as well, it is 1.92 seconds, really quick aim time. Remember, this is a tier 10, 650 damage. Let's talk about the penetration. 273 standard penetration, that's pretty good for tier 10. And then the premium shells, 329 penetration, that is really good. So you are talking 273 penetration standard shells, which means you can fire standard shells all day and probably do pretty well, and you will probably be not wasting or not losing any credits if you just fired standard shells. But you have 329 premium shells as well, which means you are not going to be afraid of anything. You can most probably pen anything with the 329 premium shell penetration. I still have no idea whether it is APCR or heat shells for premium penetration, but we'll find out soon, I guess. And gun depression 7 degrees, of course. You can't have everything. 7 degrees is, I would consider, the bare minimum. 7 degrees gun depression is going to be useful. It is not going to be a hull down boss, but 7 degrees gun depression is enough and good to good enough for tier 10. It's going to be very useful. It has 20 degrees gun elevation, so looking up is not going to be any problem at all. There is some downsides, and one of the downsides is the amount of shells that it can carry. It is only limited to 35 shells that it can load in this tank, which means it's not really good. I mean, it's like a CS52 LIS, if you're familiar with the tank. Also, I think carries about 35 pieces or 35 ammunition, so that is one of the downside. If you are drawn out in long games, you might have a little bit of a problem there, because 35 shells might not be enough for you to play like a 15-minute game where it's down to the wire. You might run out of shells. I do have some good news about the shells. The standard shells are AP and the premium shells are APCR. So this is very good news for that 329 penetration, because standard shells, AP shells are going to be excellent, and APCR shells with the high velocity 1250 meters per second shell is going to make this gun super competitive. Of course, being a tank destroyer, this tank does have a little bit of camouflage, not the greatest camo of all, but because it is a tank destroyer, you are going to get 16.87% standard camouflage values. That means if you have your BIA crew, if you have camouflage, if you have paint, I'm pretty sure you can get this to about 30+% camo, which is absolutely ludicrous, which is insane. I think this tank is going to be very competitive and a very good tank in terms of gun performance, in terms of camouflage, in terms of shell velocity. It's going to be really good. The dispersion as well, after firing, your moving your turret rotation and your vehicle rotation is the hull rotation after the dispersion after firing is 0.20 for your hull rotation, and for your turret rotation it's going to be 0.11, which means after you reload and if you do not move your hull, you are going to be very accurate. If you are just moving your turret to fire long distances, you are not going to have terrible gun dispersions. But if you are moving your hull, it's going to be like a if you're familiar with the GSOR, it is the same deal you're going to get. If you move your hull, if you're on the move, if you're turning your hull, you're going to have very bad dispersion. But if you have your hull stationary and you are just moving your turret, you are going to have pretty good gun dispersion. So that's what I have for you today. This is the new tier 10 that is about to be released into the game files. Some kind of a reward tank. It is characterized as special tank, which means it's going to be some kind of reward tank, or maybe perhaps it's a clan wars, the next chieftain or the next 279. I'm not sure. I can tell you that the 114 SP2 is going to be a pretty awesome tank in the current state that it is right now. I think it is ready for release. I think this is the final time they are going to tune it, so get ready for this tank. It is going to be very interesting. It is going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be a pretty good tank. Chinese Tank Destroyer 114 SP2. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.